US still has many cards to play to pressure Russia. Europe plans new sanctions on Russia and more military aid to Ukraine, and how US approves sale of over 3,000 missiles to Ukraine. We'll talk about this with political analyst, European Leadership Network, UK member Alexandra Filippenko. Alexandra, glad to see you, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Alexandra, US Vice President JD Vance stated that the Trump administration is still considering imposing new sanctions against the Russian oil industry to force Moscow to agree to a peace deal with Ukraine, using economic pressure as a leverage card. How realistic is to believe that additional sanctions on Russia's oil industry could shift Moscow's calculus toward a peace agreement, given its past ability to adapt to restrictions? Could harsher oil sanctions unintentionally strengthen Russia's partnership with countries like China, India, or Iran, thereby undermining US strategic goals?
Well, the very, very interesting question is regarding China especially, but let's talk about it a little later, because now these dynamics, this diplomacy dynamics between President Trump and President Zelensky and Putin, these dynamics are kind of sketchy a little bit, because we do not really understand, was President Trump serious about those new 2 weeks, the new ultimatum of 2 weeks for anyone who is buying Russian oil and Russian resources? Or was it a slip of the tongue? Because we've heard President Trump previously talking about those resources and new sanctions and buying resources from Russia. We heard about his ultimatums, 50 days ultimatums, then 10, 12 days ultimatums, then 2 weeks ultimatum, and then new 2 weeks ultimatum. We still don't know, was he serious about it? But if he was, that means that this ultimatum comes down to 4th of September, more or less 4th of September. And what we are seeing right now, no change in sanctions regarding India and Indian goods, 25% additional sanctions on goods coming from India to the United States because India continues buying Russian oil. This doesn't seem to change. In the next few days, those new sanctions are supposed to come into play because President Trump signed his executive order on August 6th, and he gave 21 days to India to stop buying Russian oil and Russian resources. So on August 27th, those sanctions are supposed to begin working. What will it be? We still don't know. It's still in the works. India still hasn't changed its ways, although we heard and we saw that Indian politicians were saying that maybe India will change now after those sanctions come into effect. Maybe now India will stop buying Russian resources. But I think everything here and everything regarding new sanctions or new potential sanctions, everything has to do with China. And as we've heard also in Vice President's interview, that of course President Trump is interested in good relations with China. They are just saying that they want fair relations, fair trade relations with China. But what we are seeing is that maybe President Trump could be ready for new sanctions on Russia and on buyers of Russian resources, but not on China, on anyone but China. It seems that way, because it seems that President Trump doesn't want to, let's say, hinder or hurt the relations with Xi Jinping, especially while the trade talks, the trade negotiation between Beijing and Washington, D.C. are on full swing and still going. So right now it seems that those new 2 weeks for sanctions regarding Russia and those buying Russian resources, they will either go into effect, maybe something will happen with it, but it will happen or not after the meeting in Beijing, because we know that Putin is traveling to Beijing for an economic summit And after that economic summit on August 31st, on September 1st and 2nd, there are going to be celebrations regarding the end of the Second World War in Asia Pacific region. And there is supposed to be a parade and a military parade, a big celebration in Beijing. And we don't know, will Putin be there or not? He'll be there for the economic summit, but we don't know if he will stay for the parade. This will tell us something about the dynamics between Putin and Xi Jinping, and it will also tell President Trump about those dynamics. If Putin is not there during the celebration, maybe this will be a sign, let's say, that China is ready to negotiate more with the United States, so we can talk about new sanctions on Russia and on those buying Russian resources, again, maybe apart from China. But if Putin is there, if Putin is there with Xi Jinping, if Putin is there during the parade, and especially if Russian forces participate in it, representing the Soviet Union, of course, a very important part of history, especially for Vladimir Putin. So if it's there, then this will probably mean that China is strongly standing on the side of Russia, and China is not giving in to any pressure from Washington, and this will make the situation more difficult. So then most probably we won't expect any new sanctions on Russia and on buyers of Russian oil. Probably this will mean that there will be pressure just on India, maybe on Brazil, maybe on Turkey, but not on China. So that interview of Vice President JD Vance, he just wanted to stress that things are going according to the plan and that President Trump is working towards peace. But a lot of things, I believe, would depend on that meeting in Beijing and what's going to be happening during those celebrations in Beijing.
We will see, Alexandra, and really Vladimir Putin will go on a 4-day visit to China. Large-scale negotiations between the Russian and Chinese delegation are planned. Russian outlet quoted Zarubin as saying. So, guys, you can write your comments. About United States of America, U.S. President Donald Trump's administration this week approved the sale of 3,350 extended range attack munition, air-launched missiles to Ukraine, with delivery expected in about 6 weeks. The Wall Street Journal has reported, and the Wall Street Journal noted that the U.S. $850 million arms package, mostly funded by European countries and including other items, had been delayed until Trump completed talks with Russian dictator Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. How does the United States define the limits of its support for Ukraine now? Could the decision to approve advanced weaponry for Ukraine after discussions with Putin be interpreted as an attempt to strike a balance between deterrence and diplomacy?
Yes, this is some kind of an attempt, because this is actually a very, very important step by the Trump administration. On the one hand, there is, let's say, temptation to say, oh, of course, the Pentagon has quietly blocked Ukraine from using the US supplied long-range ATACMS, but they are ready to sell more weapons on the European money, using the European money. Oh, they're just selling it, and they're not letting Ukraine use it, actually. But that is a very important step by the Trump administration, because these extended range attack munition, those extended range weapons, they average to up to 450 kilometers or 200 miles almost. So on the one hand, yes, maybe we still don't know. And from that reporting in Wall Street Journal, we see that probably Ukraine will also need Pentagon approval to use it. But why have it? Why sell it? Why sell it, especially while Ukraine continues developing its own long-range strike options and those flamingo weapons that everyone is talking about, and new missiles. The flamingo is expected in next few months, and of course, drones the United States are supposed to buy drones from Ukraine. We see all that production. So why sell weapons that Pentagon can quietly block, for example? Because if we're talking about those weapons, if we're talking about those new weapons that are gonna arrive in Ukraine next few weeks, why do that? This is also quite a gesture from the Trump administration, and the Trump administration is sending mixed signals, because on social media, Trump said that Ukraine cannot win without going on the offensive. If Ukraine is only in the defensive, Ukraine cannot win. It's very hard, if not impossible, to win a war without attacking the invading country. On the one hand, Trump is saying that. However, his officials have clarified that this does not mean any policy change. And Trump has criticized Biden for allowing Ukraine to strike deep in Russia. He called it stupid, and he called it an escalation. So these kind of are mixed signals. But this is what Trump likes, actually. He believes that this is his trump card. He believes that this is his card to be unexpected, to send those mixed signals so no one would know what he means. Why sell those weapons? Why send those weapons, those ERAM weapons, if Pentagon will not allow to use them? That sounds weird. That sounds also mixed, and it doesn't make any sense. So we understand that there is realization and understanding. I'm sorry for repeating myself. We understand that there's an understanding on the Ukrainian side that they can use those weapons, or otherwise, why waste money on that? Why buy that? Because right now we're not talking about any additional packages for free from the United States. They're buying the weapons, they're using the money. So now we are seeing that, of course, no one would spend that kind of money, that huge sum of money, that $850 million for an arms package that will be just laying there. Of course, I suppose that this means that from Pentagon there might be restrictions on ATACMS, for example, or on Storm Shadows, for example, but maybe not on this new mechanism. And also, again, coming to the unexpected side of President Trump, maybe they are showing, yes, we might say don't use them, as long as it's our weapons, as long as it's weapons from the United States, not talking about Flamingo, of course. We might say no if Russia acts according to our plan. But if Russia acts differently, then, of course, Ukraine can use the weapons. Ukraine can use that package of weapons that is being sent there, those ERAMs. So I suppose that this is also a mixed signal, another mixed signal for the Trump administration to the Russian side also, for the Russian side to see what kind of possibilities Ukraine can have with those new weapons, with that huge package of new weapons.
Alexandra, I agree with you that it's strange to provide missiles but not allow strikes on Russia. But as you said, we have Flamingo, Neptune, and many other surprises. So here
Ukraine doesn't have to ask for anyone's permission.
Yeah.
Sure, that's for sure. And so this is exactly why it seems so strange not to see it as a sign to the Russian side. Yes, let's look here. Ukraine already can have flamingos, already can have their own weapons, but no, we'll supply more to them because maybe they need them faster. So this all, I think, comes down to this, although, again, the Trump administration said there is no change in policy, nothing changes. But it looks like a change in policy, again, dividing what everyone's talking about and how they're actually acting, what they are doing, sending those weapons, selling those weapons, I think is quite an important signal.
Alexandra, the European Union plans to consider to use of revenues from frozen Russian assets and the adoption of the 19th package of anti-Russian sanctions at its next summit, Politico reports. And the defense ministers will meet on Thursday and Friday. They will discuss strengthening military support for Kyiv and assistance to the Ukrainian arms industry. And quote, we truly appreciate your time. And also, how soon could Kyiv realistically expect to receive funds from these frozen assets once the legal framework is agreed upon?
This is the biggest question is the legal framework. Of course, this is the main obstacle for now, as we understand, because the European Union doesn't want to be seen as an unreliable place to invest, for example, or an unreliable union, or different countries don't want to be seen as an unreliable countries to invest in and to keep the money in. So we understand that the legal obstacles are the greatest, the highest. Those walls are the highest. But as soon as those legal obstacles are behind us, we understand that the money can come immediately. The money can come real fast because we've been seeing that the money from the Russian assets, and it's very important to understand, not the assets themselves, the revenue from the assets, only what those, no one is confiscating the assets. It's only frozen. It's let's say this economic push or economic possibility to push the Russian side to actually stop the war, at least achieve ceasefire. And this again tells us that economic possibilities or opportunities are not as important for the Kremlin as the ideological ones. Ideology is far more important than economics for Putin and for the Kremlin. Again, we see it with those frozen assets. So the revenue from Russian frozen assets is just sitting there. It's coming all the time. It's coming in real time. It hasn't stopped coming onto special bank accounts. So as soon as those legal obstacles are behind, then it would be possible to get the money and to use the money. But the legal obstacles are the highest because the fear of the European Union is that if they seem unlawful doing that, or if they seem, let's say, going around some laws that they are not, but if it looks this way, then any other country, any law-abiding country, any country that doesn't even plan to attack its neighbors or plan to bomb peaceful cities, any country from the Asia-Pacific region, for example, or from the Middle East, from the Persian Gulf, any country would be afraid to keep its assets in the European Union because they might be afraid that if the European Union doesn't like something they do or their government does, then those assets would be frozen and the revenue from the assets would be used for something else or for in the European Union. So They are very careful in showcasing that they're law-abiding, that they are going according to the laws, that everything is correct, that it's only and exclusively has to do with Russian attack on Ukraine, with Russian atrocities in Ukraine. So we understand that those legal obstacles are the ones that are hindering right now the situation, and as soon as they're over, those bank accounts are just sitting there. They are sitting there. The revenue, everything is just sitting there. So as soon as it can be used, this won't take much time to get to Ukraine and to use that money for the restoration of the deoccupied territories, for helping Ukrainians, and for safeguarding the nation, of course.
A big thank you, Alexandra, for the engaging and insightful interview we just had. Your perspective and analysis as a political analyst in European Leadership Network really provide valuable depth and clarity on the topics. And we truly appreciate the time and expertise you shared with us. Thank you so much. I need to say that Alexandra Filippenko was with us today. So, guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and see you.
Thank you very much. Bye.